Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Turkish forces and their allies have seized another key town of Suluk in northern Syria. Turkish forces have intensified their offensive against Kurdish fighters for the fifth day. The defense minister said Turkish forces have also cleared all SDF forces from the border town of Ras Al Ain. Earlier, Turkey rejected US President Donald Trump's offer of mediation between Ankara and Kurdish forces in Syria. Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu dismissed the proposal, saying Ankara does not negotiate with terrorists. Meanwhile, hundreds of people gathered outside the White House demanding Pentagon's military action against Ankara. Speaking in Washington, Trump threatened Ankara with severe sanctions but ruled out US military intervention.
But I don't think our soldiers should be there for the next 50 years guarding a border between Turkey and Syria when we can't guard our own borders at home. I don't think so.
Elsewhere, France has suspended all weapons sales to Ankara, saying Operation Peace Spring threatens European security. UK's Prime Minister Boris Johnson has also urged Ankara to end the conflict in Syria and start a dialogue. Prime Minister Imran Khan has said Pakistan is willing to play its role towards strengthening peace and stability in the region. PM Khan said this while meeting Iran's President Hassan Rouhani in Tehran. PM Khan said Pakistan attaches high importance to bilateral ties with Iran. Earlier, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif received Khan at the airport. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi is accompanying the Prime Minister. This is Khan's second visit to Iran during this year. The Pakistani Prime Minister will leave for Saudi Arabia on Tuesday, when he will meet the kingdom's top leadership. For more on this, we have political analyst Hamid Raza Ghulamzadeh from Tehran. Hamid Raza, thanks for being with us. First of all, Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit comes shortly after a missile attack on an Iranian tanker in the Red Sea, and the Pentagon's announcement after that it is increasing the number of the US troops stationed in Saudi Arabia to 3,000. Are we getting closer to a tipping point in the Gulf tensions?
Mr. Imran Khan and Pakistan are a very important and significant player in the region, and they can play a very significant role in making Iran and Saudi Arabia closer to each other. So this is actually some warning to those who are seeking war in the region, like, for example, the Israeli regime and also the United States. So it is very likely that the attack on the Iranian tanker was carried out by the Israelis in order to actually sow discord between Iran and Saudi Arabia, to play a false flag so that accuse Saudi Arabia of doing such a thing and actually destroy any efforts that can be made by the Pakistani Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan.
Mr. Raza, how receptive do you think Iran's leadership is to a mediated reduction of tensions with Saudi Arabia?
Iran is one of the countries in the region, and it never benefits from any tension. So Iran has always sought the escalation of tensions and solving any conflicts and avoiding any wars and conflicts. So Iran is very eager to actually reach that agreement and to have some relations with Saudi Arabia, as it has always said. As you just mentioned, that the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman has said that with or without any mediators, Iran is actually eager to have talks with Saudi Arabia. But it seems that some elements in Saudi Arabia were not, and maybe still are not, fond of talks between Iran and Saudi Arabia. However, it seems that with the developments that we have had in the region, with recent developments and happenings that we have seen in Yemen war, in other places in the region, it seems that a main part of Saudi Arabia and Saudi let's say, government and rulership are coming to the conclusion that this cooperation and solving the disagreements in the region by the countries in the region can be the main and let's say sustainable solution to any problems. there are disagreements between countries. That's nothing that you can deny. What we have seen the experience in Syria, Iran and Turkey have had many disagreements in that part, but they managed to sit at the table in Astana talks with Russia in other talks and reach conclusion to help actually resolve the conflict in Syria. So it can happen in the case of Saudi Arabia as well. And one of the best choices, I believe, is Pakistan, because it is a country, a Muslim country. It has good relations with both Saudi Arabia and Iran, and it is not a country involved in any conflicts as we are seeing in the Arab world.
Mr. Raza, there have been reports of earlier third-party back-channel contacts between Saudi Arabia and Iran. What can you tell us about this?
There are different points about that. What President Macron or Mr. Shinzo Abe from Japan or some other people have been trying to do between Iran and the United States is a totally different story, because Iran is not actually seeking talks with the United States unless it gets back to the JCPOA and act as a rational player. But when it comes to Saudi Arabia, it's a totally different story, because we are both neighbors. We share the region that we are living in, and we share the conflicts, the tension, and everything, the damages, the benefits, whatsoever it is in the region. It is something shared between Iran and Saudi Arabia, as well as other countries in the region. But we can maybe compare it with Iraq, which tried to be a negotiator and mediator between Iran and Saudi Arabia. But let's not forget that Iraq itself is an Arab country. Iraq is a country which is, let's say, a place that Saudi Arabia is trying to be influential in. Iran has its influence in Iraq. It's nothing to be denied.
Mr. Hamid Raza, thank you for your time. We really appreciate that. Moving on, defying New Delhi's lockdown, Kashmiris have held over 300 protests since the occupied valley's illegal annexation by India. Internal Security Report says demonstrations have picked up since the August 5 curfew. Details in this report.
The Internal Security Report said 60% of these protests were held in Srinagar, Badgam and Pulwama. The report says 245 such protests were held in August, while 85 happened in September. Meanwhile, Indian troops continue cordon and search operations in Gandhabal district on the 17th consecutive day. The occupation forces have martyred 4 innocent unarmed Kashmiri youths during these operations. An Indian fact-finding report reveals that people of occupied Kashmir have chosen civil disobedience to protest against India's illegal annexation. The report, released by a team of 4 academics, activists and journalists, explains the ways Kashmiris are reacting to the lockdown. The report says every Kashmiri wants freedom from Indian oppression, while the support for a merger with Pakistan continues to increase. Meanwhile, New Delhi's clampdown in Indian-occupied Kashmir has virtually stripped the valley of all means of employment. A recently compiled report by Indian media says Kashmiris have lost jobs in IT, tourism, media and other sectors in the last 2 months.
Pakistan says Kabul's decision to close its Peshawar consulate is based on a distorted and misleading account. In a statement, Foreign Ministry regretted the Afghan government's decision. Kabul closed its consulate to protest removal of its national flag from a disputed property in Peshawar's Afghan market. The statement said the issue in question was over a private property dispute settled by the Honorable Court. Islamabad hoped a private legal case will not adversely affect the relations between the two brotherly countries. The Foreign Office also expressed hope that Kabul would reverse its decision. China's President Xi Jinping has arrived in Nepal for talks with Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. She is the first Chinese president to visit Nepal in 22 years. Both countries are expected to sign a deal to expand a railway link between the Himalayan nation and Tibet. The link will be the part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, which Nepal joined in 2017. Nepal sees the rail link with China as an alternative to its dependence on India. Well, polls are voting in the parliamentary elections with the ruling Nationalist Law and Justice Party poised to get a second term in the office. Polls suggest the governing populace are banking on welfare measures to secure a win, but their majority is still at stake. Today's elections will decide representatives for the 460-seat lower house. The winning party will have to get a majority of 231 seats to form the government. The ruling party benefits from a fractured opposition split into centre-right, liberal, leftist and agrarian blocs. The new government will have to mend soured relations with the EU over judicial reforms, which the bloc called a threat to rule of law in Poland. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan is on his visit to Tehran and he has met Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, and both the leaders are holding a joint press conference in Tehran. Let's watch live. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan is on his visit to Tehran. This is a one-day visit by Pakistan's Prime Minister, and it is regarding the mediation efforts by Pakistan's Prime Minister between Iran and Saudi Arabia on the request of both of these countries. Prime Minister Imran Khan's mediation efforts. The first leg of that is the Tehran visit. We'll keep on updating you regarding this development as soon as the two leaders start their joint press conference. For now, we'll move on to Ecuador, where the protest leaders say their decision to hold direct talks with the President Lenin Moreno might be at risk by the military crackdown. Moreno has announced a military enforced curfew over the capital Quito after protest violence against austerity worsened. An indigenous group, CONI, has led protests against the withdrawal of fuel subsidies by Moreno for the second week. Moreno said he will reconsider and assess the fuel subsidy withdrawal. Protesters came out on the 10th day of the clashes, setting the office of Ecuador's controller on fire and blocking roads to Quito's airport. Moving on, Venezuela has barred Guatemalan President-elect Alejandro Giammattei from visiting the country. He wanted to visit Venezuela to meet opposition leader Juan Guaido. Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido says Giammattei landed in Caracas but was denied entry. The Venezuelan government has not commented on the incident yet. Guaido leads Venezuela's opposition-controlled National Assembly. In January, Guaido claimed interim presidency, calling President Nicolas Maduro's re-election illegitimate. 7 million Tunisians are voting to choose the country's president in a runoff vote today. Businessman Nabil Karoui, recently released from prison, and conservative lawyer Kais Said are the two contenders. The candidates delivered a shock to the Tunisian political establishment when they came in the top 2 out of 26 candidates during the final round. Said won 18% votes, and Karoui, whose party Qalb Tones is the second strongest party in the newly elected parliament, won 16%. Karoui spent most of his campaign imprisoned on charges of money laundering and tax evasion. Said campaigned on the principle of 2011 revolution that brought democracy to the country. The runoff presidential election comes a week after the parliamentary election and 3 weeks since the first presidential poll. In the Afghan presidential elections, top candidate Abdullah Abdullah's running mate has accused the Election Commission of orchestrating systematic fraud. This comes after major contestants, including Abdullah, accused the commission of foul play. Asadullah Sadati, chief executive, Abdullah's candidate for second vice president, made the claims at a press conference. Sadati said the result sheets being counted are fraudulent. He said for past 2 days, the election body has been violating law by adding non-biometric votes to the results tally. The Election Commission said a record low of 2.7 million voted. Preliminary results of the elections are not due until October the 19th, but officials have already hinted at further delays. Belgian police have arrested up to 300 Extinction Rebellion protesters in Brussels. The arrests were made after police failed to disperse the demonstrators through water cannon and pepper spray. The climate change activists have gathered in front of the Royal Palace in the city centre, blocking traffic at the central intersection. The XR accuses the Belgian government of inaction on climate emergency. In Australia, Extinction Rebellion activists have taken to the Bondi Beach near Sydney. They formed the shape of an hourglass to illustrate a ticking clock of climate catastrophe doomsday. Dressed in red costumes, the demonstrators walked along the iconic beach promenade. The action comes during a week of planned protests across Australia as part of the global Extinction Rebellion movement. Welcome back. In northern Burkina Faso, 16 people have been killed in an attack on a mosque during prayers at the town of Salamosi. Officials say the identity of the gunmen is not yet clear. Residents said people have started fleeing the area due to a spate of ethnic violence. They said there was a climate of panic despite the deployment of military reinforcements after the deadly attack. Meanwhile, thousands of people marched in the capital of Ouagadougou to denounce terrorism and foreign military bases in Africa. 19 people have died after the most powerful typhoon to hit Japan in decades paralyzed Tokyo. Torrential rains, high-speed winds and overflowing rivers have left almost 500,000 homes without power in Japan. Typhoon Hagibis has burst a dike on the bank of Chikuma River, inundating the central city of Nagano. Japan's military has deployed helicopters to rescue stranded residents near the river. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has called an emergency meeting for disaster management in the worst-hit areas. Local authorities warned the embankment of Ueda City River could collapse as well. Communication has been devastated with all the flights grounded and trains suspended. Recent rains have helped put out the forest fires in Bolivia and Brazil, but the ecological disaster is far from over. Scientists and meteorologists warn the fire's impact could disrupt South American rain patterns for years to come. This report has the details.
Over 900,000 hectares of the Amazon forest were lost to wildfires this year. The damage has been attributed to Bolivian and Brazilian farmers' slash and burn farming practices. Now scientists warn their recklessness may soon come back to haunt them.
What we can say is that the man-made fires, together with the natural ones, have affected areas that have not been affected yet, and those are the most impacted ones. South of the Bolivian Chicanta, pristine areas. I'll even say virgin areas like those in Nembiguasu.
The Amazon rainforest is connected to a system of clouds known as air rivers, which are vital to South America's natural precipitation systems. Now that so much of the forest has been destroyed, scientists fear the continent will soon be in the grips of a drought. Ironically, it will be South America's beef and soy producing regions which will be most affected.
The region generates earth richness thanks to the Amazonian aerial rivers that carry over 23 trillion liters of rainwater per year all the way down to the south, much more than what's discharged by the ocean. The destruction of only 5% more of the Amazon rainforest will trigger the disappearance of that richness. We are very close to a moment of collapse.
Such an agricultural disaster will have significant consequences for Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro and his Bolivian counterpart Evo Morales. Both have backed soy and beef farming in forest regions and downplayed the impact of the recent fires. Now, those who voted for them could lose both the Amazon and their farms.
In the forests of Kabuls National Park in DR Congo, endangered eastern lowland gorillas are at the heart of a conflict. Their home is a haven in the province of South Kivu, a battleground for rival militias for a quarter century. This report has more.
This is the Kahuzi-Biega National Park. in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. For the last year, the forest has been the scene of conflict between wildlife rangers and members of the Pygmy ethnic group, who claim the territory as their ancestral home. But the biggest victims of this conflict could be the endangered eastern lowland gorillas, who also call this park their home.
The Pygmy people have been destroying the park through logging, coal production, sawmilling, and even mineral extraction. These activities are incompatible with conservation. They are activities which destroy the gorilla's natural habitat.
The park rangers say that the Pygmy people have illegally cleared 350 hectares of the forest and accuse other ethnic groups and regional authorities of turning a blind eye. Rising above the canopy, plumes of smoke signal one of the most problematic activities that the Pygmy people engage in, the burning of trees to produce valuable coal. This not only pollutes the air, it destroys the gorilla's natural habitat, threatening the animal's survival. In a conflict which has seen 3 deaths since the beginning of the year, the rangers are keen to spread their message.
I told them these illegal activities in the park are over. Now they're supposed to pass on the message to all other groups that can be found in the national park.
Peace talks are underway to put an end to the conflict, with participants engaging in a tricky balancing act of ensuring that the rights of the Pygmy people are respected, while the natural habitat of prized local wildlife is left intact.
Pakistan is all set to welcome the Duke and the Duchess of Cambridge. This will be the first official visit by the British royal family since 2006. Pakistan's High Commissioner to Britain, Mohammad Hafiz, says the tour reflects the importance of bilateral ties between Britain and Pakistan. Royal experts expect Kate to channel some of Princess Diana's passion from her solo trip to Pakistan in 1991. After the completion of the first phase of the Pakistan-China Economic Corridor, Islamabad and Beijing have agreed to expedite work on its western route. A Pakistan-China joint working group has also signed an MOU for transport infrastructure development. The project's second phase includes the construction of highways over 1,200 kilometers long. A Chinese delegation has called on Pakistan's Communications Minister Murad Saeed and discussed the infrastructure projects. The Chinese delegation appreciated Pakistan's timely completion of the first phase. Pakistani officials also informed the delegation about second phase's priority areas, which include agriculture, tourism, and poverty alleviation. In northern India, farmers have started burning crop residue after harvest, adding troubles to the woes of New Delhi's residents. Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal says the smoke has started affecting Delhi's air quality. Pollution in the Indian capital is already hovering at unhealthy levels. New Delhi was ranked the world's most polluted capital city in 2018. Of many things, New York City is known especially for its art. Museum of Modern Art has been at the center of the Big Apple's dynamic art scene. The museum is set to reopen with an extensive makeover later this month. Details in this report.
New York's heralded MoMA reopens on 21st October after a multi-million-dollar makeover. MoMA, which moved here in 1939, has undergone remodeling 4 times to cope with the growing collection and increased footfall. This time, the layout reflects the philosophy of the museum's first director, Alfred Barr.
When the Museum of Modern Art in 1939 built its first building, what distinguished that building most from previous institutions was it wasn't set in a park and it wasn't set up a flight of steps.
The upgrade cost $450 million. It means the museum will be able to exhibit around 2,400 works a year compared to an average of 1,500. For the first time, artworks will be displayed by theme rather than time period.
This notion of democratizing the museum, of making that whole ground floor visible everywhere and free, is very much part of this sort of character that we wanted to bring out together.
For people wanting to see Pablo Picasso's iconic works, his Water Lilies and The Ladies of Avignon will always be on show.
And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. Thank you for watching. For further updates, stay tuned with Indus.